Welcome to the deep dive. Let's talk about a specific date, July 7th, 2024. For Kenya, it was, well, a truly dark day.
Absolutely. A pivotal moment.
Today, we're going deep into what happened those nationwide youth-led protests against the Finance Bill 2024 and how they just took this incredibly tragic turn.
It was shocking, the escalation.
Our goal here is to really unpack the sequence of events, the issues simmering underneath and the terrible consequences. We want to understand what this means for Kenya and for these powerful youth movements. We're drawing on sources like Kenya's bloody anti-finance bill protests, A Nation in Mourning.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's unpack this. It started largely with this hashtag Reject Finance Bill 2024 movement.
Primarily youth, right?
Overwhelmingly, yes. Gen Z, millennials, very digitally savvy.
And their frustration was really tangible. It was about proposed tax hikes hitting everyday things, essential goods, mobile money transfers, which are huge in Kenya, digital services, even things like sanitary pads, things people rely on. And this was happening against a backdrop of already rising living costs. So, yeah, it felt like a real attack on their daily lives, their futures.
But here's a key point. Wasn't the bill actually withdrawn before July 7th?
Yes, that's crucial context. After some pretty major protests back on June 25th, President Ruto did announce the bill's withdrawal.
So July 7th wasn't technically about stopping the bill anymore.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here, I think, is it shows how deep the distrust ran. Even with the bill gone, the protests went ahead.
Okay, so what were the demands then on July 7th?
They'd escalated significantly. It wasn't just no tax bill. It became much broader. Protesters were calling for President Ruto himself to resign.
Wow.
Yeah, and demanding an end to corruption, which is a long-standing issue. And crucially, accountability for police brutality seen in earlier protests. It morphed into this cry for real systemic change.
And that's when things turned violent on July 7th. Protesters in Nairobi, thousands of them, tried marching towards key government buildings, State House, Parliament.
Right, symbolic targets. And that led to these really fierce clashes with police.
And it wasn't just Nairobi, was it? This was bigger.
No, definitely not isolated.
Yeah.
We saw similar confrontations break out in other big cities. Kisumu, Mombasa, Nakuru, Eldoret. It was a nationwide thing, a real outpouring.
So how did the security forces respond to these marches?
The response was heavy-handed, very heavy-handed. Reports described just chaotic scenes, live bullets being used.
Live ammunition on protesters.
Yes, live bullets, huge amounts of tear gas, water cannons. It seems it was deployed quite indiscriminately against the demonstrators.
Which inevitably leads to the question about the human cost. What do we know?
It's grim. Really grim. We've confirmed reports from human rights groups. Amnesty International is one, plus medical sources, journalists on the ground.
Yeah.
They put the figure at least 23 protesters killed, over 300 injured. And many of those injuries were gunshot wounds.
Just devastating numbers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the health system was completely overwhelmed. Hospitals couldn't cope. And there were these just deeply disturbing reports of security forces actually raiding medical facilities.
Raiding hospitals? Why?
Apparently targeting injured protesters, trying to arrest them right out of the hospital beds. Hundreds were arrested overall, including medics trying to help the injured, and journalists who were documenting everything.
Unbelievable. What was the reaction from official bodies in Kenya?
Strong condemnation. The Kenya National Human Rights Commission, the KNHRC, they called it excessive use of force. No ambiguity there.
Right.
And the Law Society of Kenya, the LSK, they were documenting cases of what they termed abductions and illegal detentions, basically a breakdown of due process alongside the violence.
How did President Ruto initially react?
Well, initially, the rhetoric was quite harsh. President Ruto referred to some protesters as criminals.
Oh, okay.
But as the scale of the violence became undeniable and international pressure started mounting, his tone shifted. He later expressed condolences for the lives lost.
And the international community, they were watching.
Oh, yes. The UN, the US, the EU, they all weighed in relatively quickly. Calls for restraint, calls for accountability for the killings and the injuries. It definitely put Kenya under a global spotlight.
So what happened next? In the days after July 7th, did the movement just dissipate?
Not at all.
Yeah.
If anything, the resolve seemed to harden. You saw it online immediately. Hashtags like hashtag Ruto must go and hashtag RevolutionKE just exploded, trending globally.
So the anger didn't fade?
No.
Go.
People organized nationwide vigils mourning those killed. Activists made it very clear they weren't backing down, that they'd keep pushing for fundamental systemic change. And that term,
The July 7th massacre?
yes, That started being widely used, really cementing the day's tragic significance in public memory.
When you connect all this, the initial bill, the withdrawal, the shifted demands, the violence, the aftermath, what's the bigger picture here?
Well, I think July 7th really throws into sharp relief this tension we see in many places, right? Between a government trying to manage its finances, often under pressure, and a young, digitally connected population demanding immediate change, transparency, accountability.
It's not just a Kenyan story, then.
Not entirely. It reflects broader global trends. But for Kenya specifically, it deepened the political crisis. It raised huge questions about the state of democracy, about police impunity, and critically, about the future trajectory of these incredibly potent youth-led movements.
You mentioned the youth mobilization.
Yes, the scale of it, amplified by social media, showed a new kind of civic power. It's something governments, not just in Kenya, are clearly grappling with. It definitely exposed a massive credibility gap between the leadership and its youngest citizens.
So wrapping this up, thinking about you, our listener, what does this all really mean?
Yeah, it's a powerful case study, isn't it?
It really is. What do these events in Kenya tell us about the undeniable power that youth movements can wield today, especially in challenging established structures? But also, crucially, the immense risks they face when states respond with force.
And maybe think broader, too. What lessons can we draw from this about how civic participation is evolving everywhere? About what accountability looks like in our interconnected world?
Lots to think about. A sobering look at a nation in crisis, and perhaps a sign of struggles to come elsewhere.